Folks, we have some huge news out of the state of New Hampshire. This is really devastating for the Republican Party, for the National Republican Senatorial Committee. Former governor, the very popular governor from New Hampshire, Chris Sununu, has announced he is not going to be running in 2026 to replace Shaheen in the New Hampshire Senate election. This is a huge blow to the Republican Party here. We really thought, and we had a lot of faith, that Chris Sununu would jump in this race. We know previously, when it was assumed that Shaheen would be running for re-election, Chris Sununu came out and said, hey, I'm not running for this seat. Shaheen announced about a month ago she is not going to be running for re-election, which really, Chris Sununu jumped at the opportunity to really reconsider if this was going to be the best move for him to run for the Senate. And he was widely expected, if he were to jump in this race, he would be the front runner right out of the gates. It's like on my own personal Senate prediction map, I would have had this as a lean Republican, so a Republican +5 in this state. Chris Sununu not on the ballot. I have this as a Democrat +5 state as of right now. It is very, very unfortunate news coming out of New Hampshire and the former governor, Chris Sununu. Now, we know Chris Sununu, deep ties to the state. His brother, John Sununu, was actually the senator who was in that seat before Shaheen. Shaheen ran against John Sununu 2002. Shaheen lost to him and then ran again in 2008 against him, in which Shaheen was able to win that election. As you can see right here, let's go back to 2008. Shaheen was able to beat out John Sununu, by roughly about 6.5 points in the state. He was the incumbent senator at the time. And now, fast forward almost 20 years, his brother, Chris Sununu, will not be running for re-election here. So this leaves us to discuss what are the implications of this, and we're going to start within the state. So first of all, it is very unfortunate, because the reality is that the New Hampshire state government is run by Republicans. There's a Republican governor. The executive council has a majority Republican appointees on it, or Republicans, not appointees, Republicans on it. The legislative body is controlled by the Republicans. But yet, somehow, the state of New Hampshire hasn't voted for a Republican in the presidential since 2000, I believe. 2000, they voted for Bush by a point. They haven't had a Republican senator since 2017. Really, really just unfortunate stuff here. When Shaheen beat out, it's like, I believe this is Scott Brown in this race. Yeah, Scott Brown, because now Scott Brown is most likely going to be the front runner in the Republican Party in 2026. Scott Brown is the former U.S. ambassador to New Zealand and Samoa. And was a former U.S. senator from Massachusetts for, I believe, about 3 years. And then was the nominee for that seat in 2014, and then, of course, lost in that seat. Now, it is really, really unfortunate that Sununu is not going to be running this race, but we have to get over it. We have to find a way to move forward, and you have to consider, what is the best way forward? Is it best that the Republicans on the national level invest money in New Hampshire? Do they believe Scott Brown can be a viable candidate to knock off? Most likely, Chris Pappas will be leading the Democrats. He is the representative from New Hampshire's 1st congressional district, elected back during Trump's first midterms, 2018. Is he a viable candidate? Is he? It's like we saw what the election polling looked like with Chris Sununu in it. Sununu was beating Pappas by 9 points. Chris Sununu was beating Shaheen by 8 points. Yeah, 8 points. But then Scott Brown losing to Shaheen by 10 points. So it's kind of tough, and I'm definitely not where, this may have been a battleground under Sununu, but this is a lean, if not likely, Democrat seat. But overall, this is going to affect the national Republicans. Right now, these are, and this is kind of including the lean Democrat and lean Republican seats, these are where the toss-ups are. This is where all the money's going to be spent. And, supposedly, we could even make the case, I don't want to say make the case for Texas, but the primary is going to be vicious there. You saw Ken Paxton yesterday came out and announced that he is not going to, or that he's going to be running for that Senate race to unseat in the primary John Cornyn, who's the incumbent senator running for his 5th term, I believe. But these are the battleground states right here. And actually, I'm going to classify this a little differently. Actually, I believe it'll probably be 5 to 10 points. I don't think it'll break 10 points, but we'll see. It could be midterms or lower turnout elections, so we could see the margin run up in these states. But ultimately, the Republicans, they know that their goal was to get to a 55-seat majority. With Chris Sununu in New Hampshire, that almost made it feasible to look at a 56-seat majority. If we were able to hold on to Susan Collins in Maine, able to win in New Hampshire, flip the seat, hold on in North Carolina, flip the state of Georgia, that puts you at 55, flip the state of Michigan. And, ultimately, I think that the Republicans aren't going to win in Minnesota. At the best, I think it's going to be within 5 points, but ultimately, my current classification would be a lean, so 5 to 10 points as of right now. But the Republicans could have been eyeing a 57-seat majority. This is what we were looking at. But now, Minnesota, Michigan even, I'm not so sure about it. I think Mike Rogers has a good shot, but if this election is a repudiation, a referendum on Donald Trump and the Trump administration, it's going to be tough in Michigan. It really is. Especially if you have a popular Democrat running on that side. Obviously, we know Pete Buttigieg is not going to be running in that election. He's not going to be running in the governor's race either. So we are really faced with 2 candidates in Michigan. You have Haley Stevens, who's a congressional Democrat, and then Mallory McMerrow, who's I believe a state senator or a state representative. Not a big fan of her. You look in Georgia. Brian Kemp jumps in this race, and that's kind of the same thing here. You're kind of teetering on the same thing we had in New Hampshire. If Brian Kemp jumps in this race, this is a Republican plus 5 to 10 seat. If Brian Kemp isn't in this race, I'm still going to put it, I think the Republicans will win it, but I think it's going to be within 5 points. I don't think any other Republican, whether it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, Brad Raffensperger, I believe the agricultural commissioner was looking at running as well. A lot of names that have been thrown out there. But ultimately, I think the Republicans will flip the seat. But a lot of it's going to come down to who is this a referendum on? How have Trump's policies, his domestic economic policies, his trade policies, how have they affected the average American? North Carolina, that's another one. You're kind of waiting for Roy Cooper to jump in this race. If Cooper jumps in this race against Tillis, I have this classified as a lean or a slight Democrat advantage if he's in this race. This is where we're currently at right now. If I'm being 100% honest with you, it is that the Republicans hold the majority where they're at. Now, granted, if the Democrats have a great night and they sweep the country, the great part is the Republicans still have a 1-seat majority, 2-seat majority technically. They can afford to lose 1 senator because then the vice president will break any ties. But even in a bad year for Republicans, this is kind of the worst it's going to get for them. But we don't want to lose 2 seats. We want to expand the majority. We want to expand it in Georgia. We want to hold in North Carolina. We need to hold in Maine. And I think Susan Collins will win in Maine. I think it's going to be closer than her last election, which I think she won by about 8 points. In the most recent election, won by 8.5 points. So I'm not super worried about her. I think this will be... It could be 4, 5, 6 points. We're kind of teetering right on that line of, is this a slight Republican advantage or is this a lean Republican advantage here? We're going to see as time goes on. But ultimately, this is where we're at right now. But a lot of that relies on, we have to hold North Carolina. We have to flip Georgia. And, maybe that's for the best. Maybe it's for the best we don't spend as much money in places like Minnesota and New Hampshire. In previous videos, I've said we need to pour a lot of money into New Hampshire and Minnesota. Well, New Hampshire, not as much anymore. Minnesota, we kind of need to let it play out and see where things are at, see where the everything, when the dust settles, where's it at? But this is kind of where we're at right now for the Republican Party. And it is a big change because this could have really given the Republicans a shot at a 55-seat majority. They could have been up 10 seats on the Democrats with New Hampshire, with Chris Sununu. And like I said, I'm just not sold on Scott Brown as of right now. We're going to see as time goes on. I'm willing, as evidence is presented to me, I'm willing to consider it and process it internally and let you know what my thoughts are on it and get back to you on it. But ultimately, this is where I'm at right now. And I only have North Carolina because Roy Cooper's not in the race. If he's in the race, like I said, it'll flip to the Democrats. It'll lean by like a point, not a lot, but it will, in my mind, flip to them. But there are ways that you could see this as a positive for the GOP. Resources are finite. There's not an unlimited supply of money that's going around in politics. This could allow the Republicans to have more money focused on the races that they need to flip and win. This could allow the Republicans to invest more money in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Michigan, in Maine, in Minnesota. And I think really the emphasis needs to be on Michigan and Georgia. That's where the emphasis needs to be. Vulnerable senators, one that's not running for re-election, but another very vulnerable senator in John Ossoff, who is running 2026 for his first re-election. And then you have in Michigan, Gary Peters is not running for re-election there. And like we said, Haley Stevens or Mallory McMerrow, most likely, or I think the current Secretary of State is also considered jumping in the race. We're going to see. Things still need to play out there. But this could allow the Republicans. How can you look at as this a positive? They can pour more money into Georgia, more money into Michigan, more money into North Carolina. Hey, and maybe they consider that Scott Brown is a good candidate that they want to put money behind, more money behind. Then that's something we can do. Maybe Chris Sununu is going to help run with Scott Brown. Maybe the incumbent incumbent governor from New Hampshire is going to help as well. You have, I don't know how to say her last name, but Kelly Ayotte. I probably just butchered the hell out of her name, so apologies. But that's ultimately where we're at right now. But like I said, with Sununu, they could have picked up New Hampshire. That's just not where we're at right now. And like we said, the overall change in the map is I see it a lot harder to get to 55 seats. It is going to be much harder for the Republican Party to get to 55 seats versus, where probably 54. And I'm going to say the most likely right now is they retain at 53. That's the most probable outcome of 2026. We know midterms are not good for the party in charge. And at the House level, we could see that. We could 100% see the Republicans lose the House. The Senate, on the other hand, just by the structure of the races, the elections that are going to occur in 26, I don't see it happening. Could the Democrats surprise us? Sure. But I just don't, I don't see it. And my hope is that the Democrats decide to invest a lot of money in Texas and then lose again. You know what they did back in 2018, I believe, when they invested a lot of money in Texas to only lose by about 3 points to Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz, let's see if we can find the... Oh, do they have it? Oh my gosh, look at all those people. Look at this. Beto O'Rourke raised $80 million. Holy crap. Holy crap. 80 million, almost outraised them 1-2, but we also know that Mitch McConnell was a prick and didn't want to give a lot of money to Ted Cruz in that race and didn't want to, frankly, we're going to talk about 2018. You got to look at 2024 as well. Ted Cruz didn't really get any money from the National Republicans. He raised almost $60 million in this election. And let's see if they've got the breakup down here again. Yeah, Colin Allred. Look at this. And this is mostly raised, I believe, by himself. He didn't get a lot of help from anyone else. He didn't get help from the National Senatorial Republican Committee, controlled by Mitch McConnell and his cronies. But obviously, big changes in the race here. Chris Sununu not in. That's going to wrap things up for today, folks. We will catch you next time. Drop down below. Hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't ever miss another video from us in the future.